Hello, world. Welcome to the Adrian Moment on True Story FM. I'm Ocean. And as always, I am joined by my partner in sports movie dissection, Jim Pullen.
Hey, thanks, Ocean.
Yeah, hey, Jim, it's for those that are not listening to this right away, we're recording this in the end of March. And it has finally gotten sunny up here in the Pacific Northwest. So I'm finally able to put the top down in my car and enjoy this nice sunshiny weather. What is it that you've been doing lately now that you're able to get out into the sun?
Oh, well, let's see. I played a little baseball yesterday. I played a little softball today. And somewhere in between, I watched my kids wash the truck. So that was kind of nice.
So you watched your kids wash your truck?
Yeah, absolutely. They said, "Hey, Dad, can I wash your truck?" And I said, "As long as I can watch."
So I decided to make my car washing experience and turn it into a first world problem that I just gave my oldest credit card and said, "Hey, go take my car to the car wash and make it spick and span for me so I can enjoy driving it."
Oh, see, that's nice. That's nice. I'm not quite there yet. I can't hand the keys over or a card over and be like, "Hey, can you go do this?" So, I'll take the free manual labor that they're willing to come.
Nice. Well, I'm always pro child labor when it is your own children. I mean, I don't want, I don't want anyone to, think that I'm pro sweatshop or anything like that, just in case. But I am pro putting my own children to work and, not paying.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and they brought it up. It wasn't me. I wasn't like, "Hey, it's nice. Why don't you guys go out there and scrub on my tires?" Nothing. No, nothing like that. No.
Oh, nice. Well,
it was brought up by them.
Well, if it's their idea to work, then definitely you should take advantage of the manual labor. But yeah. So then, but outside of that, I actually did spend a little bit of time before the sun came out and everything, enjoying a nice movie. It's actually a movie that I'd seen in the past. That movie was Ford versus Ferrari.
Look out there. Out there is the perfect lap. You see it?
I think so.
Most people can't.
Carroll Shelby, maybe? Lehigh Coke, Ford Motor.
Suppose Henry Ford II wanted to build the greatest race car the world's ever seen to win the 24 hours of Le Mans. What's it take?
Well, it takes something money can't buy.
Money can buy speed.
What in about speed? You need a pure racer behind the wheel of your car. That's Ken Miles.
I don't trust him an inch.
We heard he's difficult. No, Ken's a puppy dog. No. Whatever it is, Shell. No. Trust me.
You're going to build a car to beat Ferrari with a Ford.
Correct.
Did. And how long did you tell us that you needed? 200-300 years?
90 days.
This isn't the first time Ford Motors has gone to war. We know how to do more than push paper. Go ahead, Carol. Go to war.
Thank you, sir.
We're just got to stop. So awful.
Do you think you can beat Ferrari?
We're lighter. We're faster. And that don't work. We're nastier.
Given how long set stumping space.
We're gonna make history. You ready?
I was born ready, Mr. Shelby. Hit it. As
I have a story that is with me with car racing in general. And really what that is when my kids were young, I would, like many parents, you'd want to spend a little bit of time with them. And my wife liked to a lot of times have television on in the background. And I found that we were looking around for shows to have on or stuff to watch, whatever, because I'm going to be on the floor with them playing Legos or playing with the race car tracks, and all that other little kids that they have when they're between the ages of, at this time, I think they're about 8 and 5. And so we're having, just regular in the Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, spending time with them and spending time with them. And what I decided to do was I was like, well, if we have this background noise on, we were constantly, for the first few weeks that I would start really consciously thinking of this, we were sitting there like looking for different things. And then, what happened was a whole lot of Shrek. And after about 2 or 3 weeks of having Shrek on, or Shrek 2, I think at that point in time, there was 2 Shreks, and I'd seen both of them, I don't know, I think maybe 30 times at this point. And it was like, no, I'm done. I need to find something else. And what I discovered was Formula One racing. And my whole thought process behind even just doing it was, if I put on a Formula One race, I know nothing's going to happen on screen that I care that they see. And no one's going to say anything controversial in any way that I care that they hear. And it's every now and again, if the play gets a little, have a little break in the play, or they get up and do a thing, and they're done with me for a second, I can look up and enjoy a bit of a race. And so that was really my entrance into Formula One racing. And also really, reigniting my enjoyment for racing, period.
Wow. No, that had been kind of cool to be able to take that time. And that's a great choice, right? When you're hanging out with your kids, and they're young and impressionable, and you just got to have that background noise on while you're playing, or just be able to like look up and focus on something. The Formula One race, that's a really interesting one. I kind of wish I would have stolen that one from you back in the day.
Yeah, it was fun for us. I know my wife and I ended up enjoying it a lot more, and it actually shaped a couple of trips when we went out to Austin to go out to see the track and everything and do that. But that really kind of ignited my enjoyment of racing. Even when I was in that, and I'm actually, coming back around to being more in Formula One again, I went out, I was your typical fair weather fan of Formula One racing. I was really into it for a few years, and then I backed away and I stopped watching it. And now I'm coming back into it again. And yes, the Netflix documentary does help some, but I didn't really watch the Netflix documentary. I just really thought of it more as I decided to be a snob and view myself as, I'm a real fan. I can just watch the racing again and just pick it back up.
Well, since you're getting back into it, how are you going to get back into it? Like, what are you doing?
Really, I'm finding that I'm just scouring ESPN Plus and just stalking it a little bit, because that's where I can actually see the races. And so that's where I watch the races. And so then I started watching the first one. I love one of them. I got halfway through, and then I'm now trying to just pick it back up into the season again, and then try to, reestablish my bona fides as a Formula One fan. But even when during all of that time, I really never was into the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is really what this movie is about, is endurance racing. And endurance racing required a time commitment that I just didn't feel that I could get, right? I'm not watching a race for 24 hours, but the idea of a 24-hour race, I did find interesting. And the idea of you're going to take, what were the souped up cars by regular manufacturers, mostly European to be sure, and then race them for 24 hours to see who was the best. I always thought that was an interesting idea, but I never really was interested in watching a 24-hour race personally.
Right. No, I'm watching with this movie. I completely agree. It's like, all right, well, I'm in my 40s. Why haven't I ever like really watched this before? Like, why? To me, we need more of it. Like, this is amazing to me. I mean, sure, running around like in NASCAR 500 laps, and just beating the living daylights out of your vehicle and your tires. That's pretty amazing. All right, I'll give it to you. That's amazing. But to run 24 hours on an 8.5 mile track, or 8.5 mile
course,
inner city course,
not even a track.
I mean, it's insane to think that, even with the weather that it could be at that point in time that they're running the race, that they're doing this endurance and everything that you have to think of mechanically, and everything that you're dealing with, within the environment and all the changes. I mean, 8.5 miles, you can't plan for that. Like half half the track, quote unquote track, is going to be rainy and the other half might not be. I mean, you can't prepare for it. It's like, it's the biggest family trip you've ever taken as fast as you possibly can. Every single one of us now is going to be thinking about that in our cars.
Exactly. Well, you get to ditch the kids in the back hassling you there yet.
Yeah. Are we there? Yeah, are we there?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I guess, they'll stop doing it if you give them a little iPads.
But it made me really want to think about, like, at least as this is being portrayed, that, everybody is listening to it. He's got it on the radio and all that, he's listening to it on the radio. And, Ken's listening to it on the radio the one year that he didn't get to go. But to me, it was like, it threw me into, wow, the difference between sports now versus possibly how sports were back then. Like, you could, back then it seemed as if, you could dial in on the radio and you could listen into something so cool as the Le Mans, right? And now, you probably can't turn it on and find it when it's happening. So,
yeah,
unless you got the internet.
Yeah, you can stream it. I'm sure there'll be some streaming service that'll have 24 hours.
Right. And now I want to look into it. Now I actually want to go. I would love to go and maybe not watch the race. There's a cool car show that they do for a week that I would love to be able to go to something like that. But,
yeah, I still think I would only want to this, stream it for about 20, 30 minutes. I just kind of see the cars go a bit for a couple laps and be like, yeah, all right, that was good. I'll check back in tomorrow. 24 hours is just still.
Check out that poignant point at the end.
It is. It's still too long. But so anyway, then I guess that'll, we're thinking about the movie Ford versus Ferrari. What for you was the best part of it?
The best part of the movie to me, and this might kind of throw you for a little bit of a loop here, but I actually kind of liked how the movie portrayed the villain side of Ford, just like how they didn't necessarily want to really go and dive into this and develop it themselves. They try to go and try and buy Ferrari, for goodness sakes, right? And, so then...
It was just Ferrari trying to pump up the price.
Right, but I mean, Ford's thinking like, oh yeah, no, we're totally going to do this. We're going to get in there. We're going to get the best vehicle. They're like, sweet, we don't have to do anything, right? And then, even when they sync up with Carroll Shelby, they still don't even want the driver Ken being involved. When they're driving the race car, they didn't want Ken in it at all. So it's like,
he's not a Ford man.
Right. Yeah. He's not a Ford man. He can't drive the Ford car, and it's kind of like, well, initially it wasn't even a Ford car to begin with. And for the most part, it's a Shelby car. It's not even a Ford car. So, even though I'm kind of like banging on it a little bit, I actually really liked the villain side of how that was all portrayed, like how Ford is the hardened steel, they are the emblem, the oval that we all know. And this is Ford and it's going to be the Ford way. So I liked how they were portrayed that way. And then, how there was the pushback with the executives on Carroll Shelby and some of their ideas. And then, even the constant pushback with Ken and anything to do with Ken. So I liked that portrayal. But
so then you really felt that Ford was the villain in this? Because I see what you're saying with that. And, I agree that they are the easiest categorized for the villain in this. But the problem that he had, the main, really the personification of the villain in this is Leo Beebe, and so and his really what he's saying is, because he's a marketing, he's just really saying that I'm fine with Ken building the car, I'm fine with Ken testing the car. I just don't want him to be the driver, because after we get through winning a race, I don't want the microphone put in his face. Right.
But I mean, he's a Ford man, though. I mean, he's on the executive lineup.
Yes, he is. But then they try to counterbalance it with Lee Iacocca, who is the name that was famous in the '80s, which was interesting seeing him portrayed in the movie, because I had no idea he ever worked for Ford. I'd only heard of Lee Iacocca as she was CEO for Chrysler. I guess I see what you're saying with that as far as then being the villain. But even with that portrayal, and since you said it was the best part to you, do you think that they were wrong? Or were they all wrong? Like is there a shade of gray there for you with them? Or do you think that, they just were horrible, but it was a great way of how they were portrayed being horrible?
Well, I think it was a great way of how they were horrible in the situation. I mean, they're horrible from the get-go. They don't even want to build their own vehicle to go out there and race, at least per the portrayal of the movie. And then within the movie itself.
It's a silly idea, isn't it?
What, build your own vehicle?
Well, yeah, they'd never been in Le Mans. They're not a racing company. They believe that if they can manufacture 1 million cars in 1 year, then that's how they establish their dominance, not making a great racing machine.
True, but they were being challenged at that point in time to like, hey, if we're going to be bigger and better, what we really need to be able to do is we got to go out there and we got to go race, right?
Yeah,
we got to go win. We got to go win the biggest race, the greatest race of all time. And right there from the get go, Henry himself was like, all right, well, I'm kind of cool with this idea, but they weren't willing to just go ahead and jump on in and start developing something. But to the point that like they were saying, like, what was the quote that they had? Maybe you have it, but it was, we make 1 million cars out of, or we make 1 million cars before
Ferrari makes like 100. Something like that, because Ferrari's cars are all being handmade.
Right. So, I mean, right there, they're like, yeah, we're bigger and we're better because look how much we can do, I mean, that's the big bad villain. Yeah. Well,
they have they have the mentality of mass production, the mass production mentality, which was, going through, really, which they reference a couple of times in the movies about World War II. And the mass production capability of America at that time through World War II, and so they kept it going with cars. I mean, obviously, in this place, it's cars and not tanks, which is a better use. I think the world should have more cars, less tanks. But at the same time, that they had that mentality of how they established that their dominance in the automotive marketplace is by having the largest share of cars, and they're not looking at it in terms of being cool. So there's, because the idea about making these race cars is so that they will be perceived as cool, and that the younger kids will then want their cars, as opposed to Fords being viewed, similarly to how you view Buicks or Cadillacs now, which is, if you're not over 50, why are you in one? I mean, the Escalade has definitely done some good marketing to break it down, but really, if someone's like, I have a Buick or I have a Cadillac, you're kind of like, oh, so you're over 50.
Right. One of my neighbors rolled up in a Buick, one of those nicer ones, and I was like, wow, that looks kind of nice. And then I went and shook his hand and I was like, you're not over 50. But no, seriously, it's a nice car.
Car back and get out of your dad's car. Go.
Exactly. Is that a rental? No, I totally get that. Yeah. No, and that's part of the allure of Ferrari. I didn't grow up in the 60s or anything like that, but to imagine back then to be able to see a Ferrari on the street, that's nearly the same car that was out there in Le Mans too, so, that the allure of the Ferrari, was definitely there. But for Ford, at that point in time, they didn't have a car that looked like anything that was, rolling around on that big ass track.
Well, definitely in this country, the Ferraris maintain that, right? Even today, if you see someone rolling a Ferrari down the street, it is still, unless you're in Hollywood, it's not a very common sighting,
No, yeah.
Or Southern California, or, somewhere there where there's a lot of, not only wealthy people, but very nice weather, then you'll see it. But anywhere else, still a Ferrari is still, it's a rare sighting. And it's kind of one of those things where you do kind of stop and look at it. It's kind of cool as it goes by. Whereas,
yeah, definitely.
I think I've seen 5 Ford Tauruses today.
Definitely a good comparison. Yeah.
That Ford Taurus. Okay. Yeah. Or I guess, the thing is, I don't even know enough about Ferrari to be like, well, the Ferrari this or that. I just think it's just a Ferrari, that's all it needs to be. It doesn't have to have a model like, the Ford Taurus or F-150 or anything else, which,
right.
You see everywhere. You have all these different models of it. And they don't have that same prestige. And so, although I do think I still kind of come back to that with the portrayal of the Ford executives. And they all clearly were not on the same page. And the movie does a great job of definitely showing how they are conflicting with each other and have different interests, right? Yeah, Coca throughout the movie really seems to be pro Shelby and Bert, pro them being racing, pro them doing it their way, however they want to do it to win. He doesn't seem to have the power of Leo Beebe's character, but at the same time, it shows that they had differing views there. They weren't a monolith of evil, but at the same time, I think that they were doing certain things that could hinder the progress of what it would be to win. But the main hindrance to me was always just he didn't want him to drive.
Right. No, and that's a good point. But I mean, he was such a unique engineer, even with some of the research digging into him a little bit, and the movie did a wonderful job of portraying this guy being an engineer and a driver. I mean, he was an engineer first. Like, driving was something for him was enjoyable. It was a break from everything else that he was doing. But I think it was quintessential to the success of that whole program of being able to have an engineer like that understood how to drive a supercar the way that it needed to be, and to be able to give that type of feedback. Some of the computers that do the feedback now, I don't think could have given back, the same kind of feedback that he was given to the team in that time as they were building out the GT.
Yeah, not at that time. And that is one aspect of this movie when watching it. The racing scenes are amazing. And really I'm just preambling that to just say, look, the racing scenes were amazing, but one thing that definitely was interesting to me while watching it was the lack of communication from Nestle's driver to pit. I am so used to modern times or watching racing movies that are set closer to the present that it was weird to me how, yes, they needed all that feedback from him, because you would have these long stretches of time where they could not communicate with the driver. The driver is just in the car by himself. No one can talk to him. And it isn't until he comes back around either in a lap or, comes back around the test site where they can actually then communicate with them, as opposed to getting real-time feedback. Because I'm used to always seeing movies where there's, much more radio communication and they're just chattering back and forth. And so, yes, it will be have a large value of that his engineering capabilities and his ability to, understand how the car is supposed to move, how it's supposed to act, and also have the skill and bravery to drive a car that way.
Right. Yeah, which is, I mean, all within itself is just, it's insane to think about the skill that it would take to try and push the machine. It's like he was ready before the machine was ready for Le Mans. He knew what it was going to take, and he, engineered it, and he got everybody else, and Ford with the big paycheck of, $9 million back then. I mean, that's insane. It's like $100 million now. Which is just nuts, or it's shy of $100 million with the inflation calculator. But I mean, it's just insane to think that vehicle that they didn't want the driver in, who ultimately was the builder of it. It's just like, and he knew how to drive it the best, and they proved that in the first time that they were in Le Mans with everybody, with none of the vehicles finishing. But those were the things that I liked. I mean, that was kind of it's an typically there's something that's easy to be like, oh, hey, I really liked this, a particular scene or something like that. But what about you, Ocean? What was your takeaway? What was your good thing that you liked out of this movie?
I think for me, the thing that I enjoyed the most about it, which I will admit harkens a little bit back to my days of playing around with my kids watching Formula One, is the father-son relationship. The father-son relationship in this movie is done in a really, I view this heartfelt way, and really what I found interesting about it was that normally father-son relationships in sports movies take a few different forms. The most common is the kids are too young. Most sports movies, most athletes are in their 20s. Maybe you're going to have your early 30s. And so for a lot of the people in this age range, it is normal for their kids to be babies or under 5 years old or something like that. So they're just too young, and they're just simply ignored in pursuit of the main athlete's dreams. And that's one model. There's also a couple models where the kids are older. First one is like the father views his life as something that he's doing in this sport. Typically, this happens in boxing. where he's doing this to give my kids a better life, and I don't want them to have to do what I do. So I need to keep them away from this, and they're going to be able to take the fruits of this labor and then go to school, become a doctor or a lawyer or something like that.
Right.
The other way that they're displayed is another way that it's commonly displayed is that the father's a ne'er-do-well who is driven by the pursuit of his goal. Maybe he's not always as successful as he should have been, and he's a bit braggadocious, whatever. But he's just there trying to pursue his dream. The kid comes along, and then the kids in the movie are there to ground him, bring him back into reality, and realize what's it really important. And that's usually what you see in most sports movies is going to fall somewhere in the range of those 3-4 father-son relationships, when the father in the relationship is the athlete. Well, it doesn't count if the son is the athlete and there's a father. That's a whole can of worms, right? But in this movie has the rare case where we see a driven, pun intended, father to achieve a goal, but he literally wants to bring the kid with him for the ride, to experience the joys of it, while also trying to minimize the struggles. He does do a little bit of that whenever it signs a little bit hard. He does try to shield us something from that, and I think that's a normal parental protective behavior. But what I really did like about it was that he took him to the races, even when the races when he's being a jerk in the early races before the Ford even comes along, and he gets into an argument with Carol Shelby and throws a wrench at him. Which is great. Where what is it? Matt Damon delivers that line about so did you come here for your son to watch you disqualified or to be a jerk? And then he throws a wrench at him. It's like, well, I guess that answers that question.
Right.
And so, but I believe he said jerk. He might have said to be something else, but I'm not. I'm paraphrasing there. But the relationship that he has with his son about bringing him to the races, explaining to him what he's doing, talking to him, that scene when they go out into the track and he talks about the perfect lap and how he describes it enough detail for the kid to actually grasp what it is, to kind of say, can you see it? Understand that most people can't see it, and really kind of trying to, as much as he can, bring his, I don't know, in the movie he's probably about 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, bring him into the world of driving as much as he can, without actually saying, hey, why don't we put you in a little go-kart and go?
Right.
But that he brings him with them and then shares with him what he's thinking and how he's feeling, and has him there when he's, working on the car as a test drive as much as he can without disrupting his life, but then also then being there for him as a father when he can. Obviously, there's a lot of work that's involved in this, and he's gone a lot. But whenever he is back home, at least in the scenes in this movie with them, he is also still present with them. I mean, yes, they talk a lot about racing, and it is fortunate that his child likes racing.
Right.
But that portrayal of that dynamic in the movie, to me, it was special to me, not only because of the rarity of seeing this type of model in father-son relationships in sports movies, but also in that it really resonated and related with me, where I also would sincerely want to be that type of father, where if I was driven that I needed to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans, I would want to bring my kids along for the ride as much as I could. And so, and that to me was what I thought was really well done, really well written, really well acted, and really, really well portrayed, and something that I just don't see a lot of, that type of really productive, constructive father-son relationships.
Right.
In movies in general, let alone sports movies.
Right. Yeah, no, and you broke it down really well, like all the different types of father-son portrayals. And this one cinematically, it just seemed really natural. It felt and looked natural. Like, this kid wants to be with his dad, and his dad, wants to have him around as well. And, and it brings like a real good human point to the whole movie, rather than just constantly being about the mechanics of a vehicle, or constantly about, just coming up with the most perfect vehicle. The nice little breakups within the movie is these nice warm moments that you're bringing up, and it's captured very well in the movie, that father-son relationship. And it's not forced down your throat, and it's not like, it doesn't feel like you're watching actors. It feels like that young boy, and I wish I would have looked up his name, because he's probably 30 now. But in the movie,
the movie's only about 5 years old.
I know it's only 5 years old, but but in the movie though, they obviously had formed some kind of a bond that we're not seeing directly. We're seeing a product of that bond off film that just really does bring those kind of warmer, tender moments between a father and a son, where he's looking up at him and working on a vehicle with them. And I've seen that with my in-laws. My brother-in-law and father-in-law are amazing mechanics, but when he was younger, he would follow his dad all over the place with wrenches and working on things, and he was underneath the hood into the engine and doing things that I can't even explain. But when he was 14, he could explain it, like nobody else, and it was because of that father-son bonding moment, and it was so portrayed so beautifully here within the movie. So I love that you love that moment too, on top of all the nice things that introduced us to this movie and your family, and how you got into Formula One racing and all that.
Yes, and I guess to put a button in front of this, the actor's name is Noah Jupe, I believe is how you pronounce it. So he and Christian Bale did a good job of portraying a father-son relationship.
It was great.
Let me, so to not provide the impression that this movie was 100% sunshine and roses, even though it was very good, let me tell you what I thought was the worst part of the movie.
Yeah. And hit me up.
The worst part of the movie for me is they do not actually explain what is happening at the ending, right? They don't explain the ending. What happened? Why doesn't Ken Reynolds win?
You mean with the technicality that he ends up getting second place, but
correct.
We're all seeing visually he's yes. going over the line and he's first in all of our minds. We're thinking that bumper is first, right?
100%. The movie, he comes in first, even though by a hair they were supposed to be in a dead heat, but he still is a little bit ahead, right? And so but they don't really explain that. And so I felt that there was really a couple of aspects of that whole ending that, to me, at least the ending of the race, that's not the ending of the movie. So while I have somewhat ruined the ending of the race for you, that if that is the penultimate thing, and how to spoil the ending of the movie. Exactly. Yeah. So let me, after having ruined the movie, I will now say spoiler alert, because that's useful information for you now. But then, anyway, the actually explaining the ending, like what's happening at the end. The tie that they've then gone for in that doesn't happen, because they say, oh, it's a technicality because McLaren started 20 yards further back than he went, right? Now, that doesn't make any sense to anyone that typically watches racing at a fair weather point. So we're going to assume that an understanding that I did it up to that point, and most people don't anymore, watch 24-hour Le Mans the same way that you would see the Indianapolis 500, the Daytona 500, any Formula One Grand Prix race, or any of these other races, all of which are distance races. In a distance race, of course, what happens is you're just going to go 500 laps. So the Indianapolis 500 is the easy. Indianapolis and Daytona 500 are the easy ones, right? There's a set number of laps that get you around, and then you're going to have travel 500 miles. That is the distance. First one to travel the 500 miles wins the race. Done. But that's exactly. It's super easy. So if you have two cars that are real close together, one is a half inch before the other one, it's a distance race. They won that's said and done. In 24-hour Le Mans, the things that they don't explain this that well, as far as the movie, you're not already aware of it, is it's not a distance race. It's a time race. And it's a time race where the distance is a part of it as well, but it's the distance over. The race is really the amount of distance you cover in an amount of time. So when the checkered flag comes out in 24-hour Le Mans, that means that we started this race 24 hours ago. Now the checkered flag is out. This is 24 hours. And then as you cross with that checkered flag, how far did you drive? And in that case, if you have two cars that go right together, then whichever one started further back clearly covered the greater amount of distance and therefore won. And that is not clearly communicated in the movie that's what's going on, right? It's just told as a flippant, you're brushing it off, and then shrugging it off and saying, oh, well, you promised me the drive, you didn't promise me the win. I am fine with the character's reaction to it, because that is also showing a moment of growth in the Ken Miles character, that he recognizes that really what he wanted to do was drive the car in this race and get his perfect lap and do the best he very well could do. And he's going to grow as a person and not be immature about things because he lost on what is viewed as a technicality that isn't really explained. And so I think that the very minimum from the movie's perspective, and we can talk about what happened in the real world for a second, but in the movie's perspective, it doesn't explain to me as an audience member what is happening. Why is it that he didn't win in a satisfactory manner? Because I'm just left with, that doesn't make any sense. So you're saying that the plot demanded he loses, so he loses. And that's what I like. And I think that it could have been fixed really in a couple of ways.
Ooh, do tell me, because I'm kind of wondering, because I was like, because I've been thinking about it too, like how could it have been different? Because so I want to know how could it have been fixed?
Well, I think that it really kind of fixes it and also bolsters some of your villain point. The first one is that in what we're looking at what happened in real life when this happened. Leo Beebe, who was, by the way, I keep on saying Leo Beebe, who was played by Josh Lucas, who was amazing in the movie.
Absolutely amazing.
It was great. He was great. Leo Beebe comes up with the idea during the race to do this, and then it is communicated to the officials of 24 Hour Vermont. They ask, hey, we want to have them do a dead heat. Is that okay? And at first, according to a lot of reports, at first they said yes, they'll just do a dead heat tie. Then about 15, 20 minutes later, the race officials get together and they're like, no ties. And so what they do is they say, look, it's a timed race. We're doing it this way. Whatever car covers the most distance in that 24 hours wins the race. So there is no tie. And the Ford executives knew this about a half hour, so depending upon the story report, half hour, an hour before it actually the end of the race occurred. And so, to fix it in the movie, just throw in a scene where they say to a race official, all you have to do is throw in a scene where someone who has like a jacket on that says Le Mans race official walks in and says, hey, if you have these cars tie, this is what will happen, right?
Right.
And then from there, then have the executives say nothing. Keep the plot going. At that point, I think you fix two things. One, you've pre-explained what's going to happen at the end to a satisfactory manner that any viewer that doesn't already understand this will understand. And B, you've made them more evil.
Yeah, let's cut it. Let's do that. Let's go back and do that. Let's put in that 20-second scene, because you're right. I mean, you don't even need a whole lot. I mean, you only need, like you said, just some dude in that red official jacket talking to an exec. You could even put some subtitles underneath there. I mean, there's so many.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, or you could have just done it like in a classic way where it's just like that faraway shot. You just see, so you're assuming, you're like, what's going on here? Like we didn't even have to hear anything. The visual of those two having a conversation would have worked, and those two being the exec and somebody in a red coat.
Yeah, I think it would have enhanced them as a villain, but to explain to the audience what was going to happen before it happened.
Right. No, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, to add on top of that, though, in the real world, like kind of like what you were talking about, the racers not really having a whole lot of communication on the go. Can you imagine what it would have been like for Ken to hear that? If it was known, like if during the race it kind of leaked, if they could have had a radio, they could have told Ken a little bit into what was going on. I mean, ultimately it's all a surprise for everybody at the end. But if there would have been that opportunity to have some kind of communication, just to like kick him in the pants or something. It's like, what else would have happened? Like, would he have had that adult conversation or the adult reaction at the end in the movie in real life? Because
you mean if he'd been told ahead of time that Ty is going to make it where he's second?
Yeah.
I think he doesn't slow down.
Yeah,
not only does he not slow down, I think had it been known that the Cheryl Shelby wouldn't have asked.
Right. No,
because at the time they were still saying, because he has Ken Miles that year is going to win the Triple Crown for endurance racing, which is the winning that 12 hours of Sebring, 24 hours of Daytona, and then the 24 hours of Le Mans. And if you tie for the 24 hours of Le Mans part, you still have won all three, and therefore that Cheryl Shelby said, you're still winning it. You're kind of being a company man. You're helping out with this. But if he had known that it would make him second, he wouldn't have even asked.
No, pedal to the metal still all the way.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's, so to me, that is the easy way to fix that part of it. Also, it makes it where it makes more sense at the end when Cheryl Shelby grabs Leah Beebe saying, you knew. It doesn't make any sense that he would know, because they've been portrayed this whole time as car executives that don't understand anything about racing. So how would he know this minor technicality? Well, he knows because somebody told him. And that would then add a little bit more evil to him, where he's really kind of being rooted against. Whereas when I think about how you were saying earlier that they were part of the best part of them is that they were the villains. I think that they weren't evil enough, because the problems that they had with Ken Miles were ones where I can see their point of view. The villain is always the hero in his own story. And in this case, I could see their point of view. They did not want Ken Miles verbally to be the face of and the voice of Fool.
Right. Especially for back then and in the 60s.
Yes, they would not have gotten wall-to-wall racing news coverage of other things where they could have counterbalanced it. Anything he said would have been the voice of Ford, and they didn't want that. And in this way, if you include just that little quick 20 seconds where they know, they're a little bit more evil and they're a little bit easier to root against, because they're trying to keep the good man down.
Yeah, no, like I said, let's recut that, or let's call out Matt Damon and be like, hey, you got that scene somewhere. Let's just put that in there. It explains it a little bit more.
Yeah, yes, it does. And the other part of the ending, which I did, I don't know if you noticed it or really looked at it this way as I did, was that they don't explain how he loses the laps. When the idea comes up, and it turns out, when the idea comes up, let me back up. When the idea comes up to do the tie, the Iacocca says, well, he's ahead by 2 laps. So how is he supposed to, what's he supposed to do, slow down? Yes. But they just brush that off. And they never really get into, in the movie, well, how does he lose those 2 laps? Because to do that, does he pit? Does he slow down enough for the whole field laps him twice to catch up? What does he do there to close that gap? And interestingly, I forgive the movie a bit for this after when I was looking things up, because I was really bothered by how the movie ended and didn't explain why that tie was, and I wanted to know why did he lose? Was that it seems to be that from various contemporaneous people at this race at this time, there seems to be a lot of disagreement, or no one really knows, in air quotes, how far ahead was he? Was he 2 laps ahead? Was he 40 seconds ahead? How far ahead was he? And then B, how did he lose the lap? Did he pit? Was there a braking thing? Was there a sabotage? There's all these various rumors and innuendos of how that happened that apparently are not really substantiated, which I found surprising, given that, well, the race is on television, so you should be able to see.
Yeah, you would think there's a count, right?
An account of it, but apparently when you look up information about how did he lose this, there's all this disagreement of A, how far ahead was he, and then B, if he was 2 or 3 laps ahead, how did he lose those laps?
Right.
The movie glosses over that, which I can forgive. There are lots of things that a movie has to gloss over. It's really hard to portray people's lives, because there's a large chunk of these people's lives that is being portrayed in a 2.5-hour movie. And so you have to let some things go, and the whole controversy of how do you lose those 2 laps, it's like it doesn't really matter to the plot. It was just an interesting digression to me that I could not figure out, even if they tied, or even if he comes out, if McLaren finishes a little bit ahead, how he doesn't still win, because he still should have been 2 laps ahead.
Right. No, and that's a good point. And like, just even as a viewer, really, until you just brought that up, I totally forgot about that line, like by Iokoka. Like, what do you want him to do? He's 2 laps ahead. You want him to slow down. And then for the most part, later on, it cuts to like that. It's almost like a little like memory montage or whatever that Ken is, slows down. We see him slow down on that long straightaway. And now, like in the context of our conversation, and you're bringing up a very good point, that was a loop that did not get closed in the movie, talking about how far ahead he is. But then on the research, that's astonishing that you can't even find anything to pinpoint like, no, he stayed there, and he just like, they went by him twice, and then he sped up on that straightaway, and they dragged down there. Like, nothing out there. You can't find anything. That's insane.
Yeah, it's insane. It was surprising to me when I first heard that there were people that had conflicting information about how he lost the 2 laps.
This is like the world's race. I mean, this is the race of all races, for the most part. But but it's a big one.
It is. It is a big one. I choose to believe that if I was to dig into it far enough, that someone out there would have a definitive thing. But then the problem then becomes that it almost turns into a conspiracy theory of too many people think that too many different things happened. So, did he slow down? Was it the one-armed man? Right? There's all sorts of conspiracies you can into with that to do it. And so I do find that to be interesting and something where it's an interesting point. So therefore, I don't fault the movie at all for not trying to really divulge how that happened. Just go with it and let this happen. It doesn't affect the enjoyment of the movie. It doesn't affect the impact of the ending. It doesn't affect all the great things about the movie itself. It's just something that I just found was an interesting point. But that, again, for me though, the worst part was not explaining why he got second place.
Yeah, I can. I agree. I agree with that. No, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. Mine's not as good as that one. I'll tell you that right now. But mine is more from like a car enthusiast. It's like, here Ford approaches the man Carroll Shelby, which, now you look on various Fords and there's Shelby and there's the Shelby series and you got Cobras, right? And so you've got the brands that came from the man's name that you can go and buy today. But we don't know a whole lot about him in the movie. And I get it. Like you're saying, it's 2.5 hour movie already. It's a great movie. It doesn't feel like it's 2.5 hours, but you can't put a whole lot more in there. But the man who saved Ford from being able to design and build and put this.
Do you think? Sorry, do you think saved Ford? Do you feel that with
we'll save Ford from the challenge? No, we'll save Ford from the challenge.
Okay, like
the challenge of Le Mans. Yeah,
okay. Got it. Okay,
yeah, but Ford went to him, right? To say, hey, we want to build this together. Let's do this together. And he's like, well, what kind of money am I looking at? And they're like, an open-ended check, right? And so,
what kind of money?
Right.
I want that kind of money.
Wherever anybody's offering that deal, I'm here. But anyways, to me, it would have been nice to have a little bit more about the man, Carroll Shelby, and his family. We get to see a lot about Ken, which is great. I mean, it's a story that needs to be told, for seeing Ken Miles and everything that he is involved in this program and driver and everything. We get to see his family. But we really don't get to know Carroll all that much. And, without Carroll Shelby, there's no Ken either. So it's kind of like, I feel like for me, just being a car enthusiast to some degree, I can't like sit there and quote like specs on a motor or anything like that. I'm not like that, but I love cars and I love looking at cars and I love Cobras. Cobras are this great vehicle. I love the brand on Ford and the Shelby vehicle itself in the 60s was a phenomenal race vehicle. So, I understand why Ford went to Carroll Shelby. I kind of wish that the movie would have given us just a little bit more. That's all.
What would you want to know more about him personally or professionally? They do cover he wins Le Mans. He has a heart condition, and then he has to stop racing. And they cover that happened in a short period of time because he wins Le Mans in 58, and then he has to stop racing in 59 when the heart condition is diagnosed. And so, would you found it to be more interesting to know about his family and his side of things, or just
like what his current family situation was back then? In the early 60s, mid 60s, when the program was getting kicked off. So I think, I just think that they could have maybe just touched on it a little bit. Was he married? Was he previously married going into the situation?
Well, I mean, Carroll Shelby himself was married 7 times. So I don't know that he would have had more than one marriage that would have gone through this time period. But no, I'm sorry. He was married during this time period. No, this movie would have covered more than one marriage. So they would have had to then insert one wife and then get rid of her around 1962, and then bring it up.
So maybe there's something behind that, though. Maybe that goes along with like how many times he was selling one of his vehicles. He sold it like 4 times in the same week or whatever, right? So maybe he's a little bit of a shyster or something. Give us a little something. Give us a little meat or something. I mean, now you're telling me that the man's been married all these times around the same period. Give me something about him.
Totally.
I mean, otherwise he's just portrayed as like, here, he can build this amazing vehicle.
Well, yeah, totally. You'd be really changing the movie because you'd have this really faithful, devoted family man who's going to be as part of one half of the team. The other half of the team has between the beginning and ending credits 3 different wives. Right. So that's going to be totally very different, and try to explain what his ups and downs of that. So,
I know, but I mean, is it because of like how dedicated he is? Is it because of like he's a bad businessman? He's a total shyster. Did he take money from them as part of I don't know.
Take money from them.
Maybe. I mean,
we could be a great movie now. All right, so he stole money from his ex-wives. So
he stole money from his ex-wives.
The biography of Carroll Shelby. So he stole money from his wives.
Hey, I didn't look into his biography.
Between 1960 and
just saying
70, and that's how he got his car manufacturing off the ground.
Right.
I like it.
I mean,
yeah.
Give us something. But I mean, I get why they don't because of some of the facts that we're talking about here. But if it was a tumultuous time during that time period for him, and he's going through all these different women and getting married and whatnot, so maybe there's something else behind it, and maybe it's not for us to know. Maybe there's maybe we don't need to know that side of Carroll Shelby if there's like a whole nother side to him. But we get to see some of his business practices.
Yeah, and I think that really is the point of at least for the purposes of this movie. I think the point of it is the building him up to be able to play, really to mature from being a driven race car driver to what they do jump to where he's running the company, he's building his own cars,
right? And
then also being able to try to play the political game to be able to get Ford on board. The idea of the really great scene, which even when I was watching the movie, I thought there's no way this could happen in real life. But the great thing when he drives heading for the second round of the racetrack, and it takes a really qualified type of driver to handle this car. So let's get the right guy behind the wheel, and he starts bawling and crying and stuff. And it's a great scene, but he's basically able to utilize and play the political game that was necessary in order to achieve the result he wanted. I think that was the part of Carroll Shelby that we were seeing that ultimately being slapped on the side of Ford cars now that are you can buy today. They are still revered. Ford, was it the Ford Cobras and those Ford Shelbys, the Mustang Shelbys are still great cars.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are all very good points. I'm just, I don't know. I think it would have been interesting, but it's 2.5 hours. I totally get it. Yeah. And the better story, if you were to take some of the storylines, even some of what we're trying to throw out there. That's probably not true because I definitely didn't do any research. But, but you know,
no, I think these are great stories. No, forget the research. This is awesome. He's marrying these rich women, taking their money and divorcing them. I'm on board. I honestly, no, I want to see that movie.
Now, okay, all right. We call it like Cobra.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be a different one. There's the Sylvester Stallone movie Cobra, but this one sounds better. Another great aspect of this movie is Katrina Balfe's portrayal of Molly Miles, the wife of Ken Miles. What do you think in this movie is the Adrian Moment?
Ooh, good question. For me, I would like to define the Adrian Moment in this movie. During the scene where, you know, she's driving along in that beautiful station wagon, man. There's something about those 60 station wagons.
The wood panels?
Man, oh my God, I love those things. Like I have a dream. I want to own one, but
okay. Well, you know, so I'm gonna digress here. Those remind me of back when you could still sit in the tail gunner position in the car. You know, as a kid, when you're 8, 9 years old, you put your back and those in the tail gunner position. You put your back against the driver's seat. You put the back seat down. I'd sit back to back on my mom would be driving the car, and I have her right back to her, sit in the back seat, and I'm the tail gun.
Oh yeah,
great.
Oh man, I love those vehicles. So I mean, it's not why I like it because of that scene and that vehicle, but it's because, you know, they're just driving along and they're having a really good conversation, and she's just getting all upset, and she's just starting to drive a little erratic, right? She's like, all right, well, I'm upset. You said that you were done racing, and then you went off just the other day with Carol Shelby, and she's really, really upset. And she takes it upon herself to start driving like a crazy person, passing cars, going all nuts. And she's just trying to prove a point. You know, if you're going to do this, then you got to talk to me, and I'm going to support you. And without exactly all those words in that exact moment. And she's just taking control of the situation and just really just trying to support her man, trying to shake it up a little bit. And, you know, pretty much for all intents and purposes, without saying it, she's saying, you know, shit or get off the pot, son. And, you know, and she's doing it in her way and just taking control of that moment in that vehicle. And it's like proving a point to the race car driver. You know, he's getting a little scared over there.
So you feel that turn there in the, you know, putting a little bit of fear in him, and then letting him know it'd be okay was your movement.
Yeah, you know, and you know, it's showing the support. You know, she's upset. You know, because it's upsetting to her, right? You know, it's like, you know, if you would have just told me straight out of the gun that this is what you wanted to do and you wanted to get back into racing, I would have supported you. But you went behind my back, you know. And now, you know, with everything that she says, the speed increases, you know, and then it gets a little bit crazier on some of the driving, you know, and she starts, you know, chasing whatever she's chasing, because she's so upset that he didn't, you know, confine to her that, you know, this is what I want to do. I kind of want to get back on this team. I want to do this. I want to build this. This is going to be something that we're going to do. And, you know, she just takes it and proves to him, like, I'm here for you. You don't need to like hide from me. I'm here for you, and I'll support you. Just come out and tell me what you want to do.
For me, the Adrian Moment in this movie is slightly different. You know, again, that's the functional aspect of the narrative portrayed in this movie. Again, is a similar and I think welcome change in this movie compared to other sports movies. It is all too common that the marriage aspect of our hero is such where it is also being ignored alongside his children. In pursuit of his dreams. And for me, though, that I define the Adrian Moment here in when he doesn't get to race in Le Mans in 65. And at that point, he is down. He is definitely depressed. You know, he's showing it by just, you know, kind of clocking into work and going into the office and going to still work on the car while listening to the race, but not listening to the race. And so he seems at that point at his lowest, of where he is really going to then just maybe it's not worth it. Maybe he's not going to ever get his dreams. Maybe he's not ever going to be able to make it to that drive and do those things. And that when she shows up at the garage with the picnic basket and then changes it to that great Nina Simone song that they listen to when they get to there. And that moment of where she really is just there supporting him, not it's really kind of a what I consider a milder version of it, not telling him, oh, we need to do this, oh, you should do this, this is what should happen, or any either advice or anything of trying to, in a sense, fix the problem, but really just showing A, that she loves him, and then B, being there for him in that moment while that race, taking his mind off of what it is that is really bringing him down and depressing him at that moment, and lifting him back up and allowing him to then, in fact, refocus his efforts for the next season or the next year to really move forward and achieve his dreams.
Yeah, and another beautifully conveyed message without all the words that she had to say. Just being there is like, honey, I'm going to support you no matter what you decide to do. If you want to be underneath that car, just cranking on some nuts and bolts to be the corporate guy, and you're going to work on that machine, go for it. I'm here for you. You want to quit? Quit. You want to race? Let's stand up and say, I want to race some more. At least to me, there's a lot of really good implications in that moment that you're mentioning here. It's a really good moment.
Yeah, I think that while I do find it interesting to phrase a moment as a moment of sport as, hey, honey, do you want to work on nuts and bolts? That's a great phrasing of that.
No pun intended.
No pun intended there. I think that outside of that, I felt that that moment was more about to persist. I think that the ability to quit or do go whichever direction you want, whichever makes you happy, I think that is more conveying than you were saying earlier, which was about when she's driving past the car. She just wants to be included, and a part of it needs to be make sure that we have a functioning partnership. This isn't just a you do whatever you want, I stay home and take care of the kids. If you were to recommend this movie to someone today, how would you recommend someone watch it?
With their clothes on. No. This is a clothes-on movie. No.
To be fair, if you're at home, hey, I'm not trying to judge. All I'm saying.
Right. No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, the nice thing about this movie is that, it doesn't get deep into the weeds of racing or the mechanics of it or anything. You get to visually see a lot of really good things about quote unquote racing. You get into a little bit into Le Mans, and it's enough to at least want you to go and Google some more if you've never seen or heard of that race. This is a good thing to watch that might get you to want to do a little research on something that you've never heard or seen before.
How well do you think this movie portrayed the sport of racing?
I think it touches it really well. You get some of the sights and the sounds of the Le Mans race itself. And, it's enough to at least want you to, go and Google a little bit more, just kind of like what we both did, I think, on this movie. And I like, from the build standpoint, you don't really get into the whole weeds of like the mechanics of a motor or the mechanics of the aerodynamics, other than, what they showed us, which was kind of cool. I really liked they get out there and they put the yarn on there and you could see the different draft points on the vehicle as it was increasing its speed. And that's about as technical as it gets. It's really cool.
Like the racing sequences, the racing scenes themselves.
Well, the racing scenes themselves, they're probably some of the better racing scenes that I've seen in a movie. You're inside the vehicle, you're on the outside of the vehicle, you can hear it, you can feel it.
I found that really what I enjoyed doing about the racing sequences. They were all done really well. But for me, it was I believe it's the first race, the race where he is racing when Ken Miles is racing with the broken windshield, and what it's early on before they get before that scene. I think that racing sequence I think showed multiple things. One, it does really the groundwork for how great of a driver Ken Miles is, but also that he's giving you an internal monologue during the race of what he's thinking, what he's doing. How this is too soon. Don't do this yet. Don't try to jack to, I'm going to jack you. I'm going to take you out here. I'm going to pass you this way. And, you're going to try to get this, and he's really talking to the drivers as a plot device, but really it's providing more of an internal monologue to explain the different decisions that he is making during the race and moving forward. And I felt that as a viewer, it really sucked you into, not only do you care about the stakes of the race, you care about the outcome of the race, because stakes-wise, I don't even know what the stakes were. I mean, you needed to win this race or do well in this race. I think for sponsorship, they mentioned a little bit of that at the beginning, but it didn't seem to be that was what was important as much as that they were able to portray it in a way that you were invested in his outcome, in the outcome of the race, invested in his placement of the race, and invested with things as they went along, and that they brought you along. That is, as opposed to you as a viewer seeing what looked like a cool racing either sequence or moment, that he was effectively, while talking trash to the other drivers, also explaining to you what it is he is doing to then explain why he is the better driver in this situation and why he is winning.
It does draw you in closer to the movie, I think, rather than if there was like a narrator that was talking about it, or like if it was like like if you were watching it on ABC and one of the commentators was making the comments of like, oh, it's really close on the inside, and if it was that type of narration, I don't think it would be as interesting. And yeah, so his conversations that he's having with the other drivers inside his car and inside his about what he's getting ready to do definitely draws you closer into that race moment.
This movie is recent, and also it's a good movie. It's well written, it's well directed, well acted, and the sequences and scenes are not all very engaging and you enjoy it. But I think that from an elevator pitch standpoint, it's easy to recommend this movie for people to watch because of how it is so good in so many different ways. Man, Jim, it is great to always talk about movies with you. And to everyone listening to this, thank you for downloading the show. If you would like to continue the conversation about this or any other sports news, contact us on our Discord page at True Story FM. Please like, rate, review, and most importantly, share this podcast with anyone you know that loves sports and movements.
So